juries. The Independent reports that television cameras may soon be allowed inside British courts.
Good.
It may be time to stick to email. The Daily Express reporting how Royal Mail has put up the price of first and second class stamps, not to £1 just yet. And the underclass of Britain, last summer's riots blamed on a lack of support and opportunity for young people, is in the eye. The story leads The Guardian to verdict on riots, they say. The Times reports that health authorities were late to inform thousands of women affected by the breast implant scandal of the risks that they faced. Fuel panic. The Daily Mail reports that motorists are buying up fuel after government officials warn that tanker drivers may strike. The Mirror reports that George Osborne is losing touch with everyday Britons following his decision to tax hot pasties. That story also leading The Sun, which has branded George Osborne heartless and compared him to Marie Antoinette. Let them eat cake or pasty. Interesting. So let's take a look in more detail about some of those stories, starting with The Eye and The Guardian, the verdict on the riots. People need a stake in society. What did you make of the official report as we saw it?
Well, I don't think there was anything earth-shattering in the report. There was nothing that we weren't necessarily expecting. You know, the issues of poor parenting, lack of support, failure to rehabilitate offenders, all of the rest of it. I think the whole issue of materialism is interesting that they decided to kind of focus on that.
Kelvin hates that bit.
I heard that you hate that bit. I mean, for me, I think that's really interesting because for me, I think that this was the riots were about a kind of poverty of aspiration, or rather, not so much poverty of aspiration, but wanting things, but not wanting to earn them, not wanting to get them quickly. And I do think that comes from a culture where people feel that to be really successful is to get something with very little effort. And you know, when I was growing up, we didn't have kind of reality TV stars or people who'd become overnight sensations and suddenly got very rich. And I think over the past 10 years, a lot of the heroes that make it big now are overnight sensations, and people. There is a culture now of people getting things quickly. We don't have a culture of earning things, and I do think that's in part fueled by you know, brands.
What is the answer to that then?
The answer to that is to
ban advertising.
It's not to ban advertising. It's to give people values and make people think that.
But how will you do that? How do you give people values?
Well, I think that is an issue of parenting. I think it's also an issue in schools of how earning something makes it more rewarding than just getting it for free. How showing
these people were just thugs who had an opportunity, and they had a way, either through Facebook or BlackBerry messaging or something, of spreading their thuggishness to other people who then just went and destroyed and set fire to things.
Take a step back then, why are they thugs? Isn't that
But there's always been thugs in our society. What happened in this case is that the cops, I presume too busy out there on Operation Wheating and Co, to actually be defending our property, despite the fact that every year my council tax goes up because I pay the cops more money, right? They weren't there, they couldn't defend stuff. Once, of course, you see the cops up and can't defend your house, then you're going to go after it. Now, this report, by the way, which makes it sound as though, you know, some people with big old brains are all on it, whereas actually put together by what I would basically be described as bleeding hearts, and the committee consisting of experts from the voluntary and public sectors, who you can imagine them all sitting there, oh, the poor little kids and all the rest of it. I haven't got an ounce of sympathy for this. If this report will go straight into the waste paper basket, we'll never hear of it again. What I loved about the courts is they're killing these people in the courts. I mean, when you and with the poor and the oppressed, what about the millionaire's daughter from Orpington? I mean, was she part of the poor and the oppressed?
But Kelvin, it's so depressing. If what you're saying is the reason why this happened is because of lack of policing, then what you're saying is everyone wants to do it.
Part of it was the cops. The cops were
We all want to do it. I want to do it. You want to do it.
No,
we're just not doing it because
there is a minority.
A
minority of the sort of some kind of underclass. There's always been an underclass in the whole of civilization. Some people have got stuff, other people haven't. What we saw here was a load of pampered, ill-brought-up children who decided we're really going to get somebody. There were some shocking scenes there. What about the Croydon scene where they torched that man's... By the by the way, tell you the viewers, April the 11th, that guy gets weighed off. The guy who torched the warehouse, in the furniture warehouse, he gets weighed off. We should all sit by our Twitters or be sitting there watching Sky News that night and punch the air as that guy gets 5 years. I thought that was a terrible moment.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
No, it obviously was. I mean, I was in Uganda making a documentary when the riots happened, and this is a country with like child soldiers, people in complete poverty, and people on the street, people in a hospital I was filming it, were coming up and offering their condolences to me for the terrible situation in my country.
Fantastic.
It was an embarrassing time, but I do think there's more to it than, I mean, I don't think it's to do with an underclass, it's to do with the fact that young people want stuff, and they want stuff a lot, and perhaps, they want to get it very quickly.
How do we deal with that, though? How do we deal? What do you say to those? What do we say to those kids in school? The teachers are flat out. It may be parenting. I don't really want to blame the teachers because I don't really think it's their responsibility.
Well, do you think schools should be fined for failing pupils?
No, I don't.
I
think parents should be fined. I don't think parents should be allowed to have loads of kids and all the rest of it and then give the responsibility to us, or we see the responsibility on the streets. I definitely don't think it's the schools' issue.
Are we basically saying we don't necessarily like the way society has developed over the last however many decades it is? That's kind of...
That's a great story about Uganda. I love that. You know the next thing, they'll be dropping red parcels on Rochdale.
Well, at that time, Iran was sort of sending their condolences, for the terror on our streets. It was not the greatest moment in our history. I think it's hard to be a young person nowadays because you are bombarded with images of people who don't have very much talent, who have got very successful very quickly and have lots of money, and the most followed people on Twitter are reality TV stars and X Factor and whatever, and there isn't this, it's not like, wanting to be a footballer or wanting to be an actress or wanting to be a musician where you have to learn a discipline and practice and you'll get something from that discipline of practicing. I think nowadays people want to get things as quickly as possible, and that's the shame.
I don't disagree with that, but I don't think we should indulge them and we should bang them in the slammer and leave them there for a couple of decades.
So many
Meantime, a sort of not related but similar story is the student jailed for these racist Twitter...
Now, bizarrely, the filmmaker, who you'd expect to say this is an outrage, now says...
I don't think he should have been jailed. I think our prisons are already very full. I think it's an outrage that he was, saying racist things in a public forum. But then again, there's a massive inconsistency with this. Stan Collymore was bombarded with racist tweets. The person who did that was given community service. I don't know if 56 days in prison is really going to help this situation very much. I know it's supposed to be sending out a message. You can put him in prison for 3 days. You can make him do hundreds of hours of community service.
He's missing his university education now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's bunged out. He's bunged out the university. No, they made it quite clear down here. He collapsed in his mother's arms, weeping, and then he says, "I'm not a racist." Now, what hasn't been printed, and I haven't seen it, is what he said about Mwamba. Now, that's absolutely...
We were talking about that earlier, actually. I was saying that you can't really fully understand whether you should have any sympathy for him at all until you see what he wrote. But nobody wants to write or broadcast what he wrote.
Yes,
it was not good work, let's put it that way.
But look, I know through Twitter some of the stuff that's written about me, okay? Now, actually, I'm not in, I don't feel... massively bad about these people, collection of thickos, whatever, but they're not being racist. Especially the thickos from one part of the country. But I think the issue is that this sends out a message. You go into these kinds of illegal areas, right? You are going off to jail. This guy now...
He did say he'd been drinking since lunchtime.
He claimed he'd been drinking.
I mean, maybe he hadn't, who knows?
He claimed he'd been drinking, but, these guys always come up with some kind of...
That was a day of all of the rugby, and there were a lot of people who were drinking all day who didn't end up turning into racists at the end of it.
It's the freedom of Twitter. People don't realise the implications of what they're doing, and that it can be pursued, and it is a lesson learned for all of us, I think, don't you?
Yeah, this is an unregulated news market. And what you're seeing now is the courts are regulating it, whereas they're not licensed.
People are not regulating themselves and what they're
not licensed like your business. It's not on the one hand this, on the one hand that. The only tweets I get is how they'd like to murder me. So I'm going to send all mine off. Do you know, the jails of this country could be full up just with people who've made that allegation. Great sadness, that.
We'd have to invest in the prison system.
Yeah, new prisons.
Indeed. Meantime, Stamps, Daily Express, where are they getting the £1 from?
I think they're getting it out of the sky, because what they're referring to is the fact that Ofcom has